and welcome to Our People, the podcast where we give space for Holdeman Stories. We focus on hope, healing, and inspiration. Connection, consciousness, and love are the driving motivations for this project. Remember to have grace for those who have chosen to speak out and share their experience. Please enjoy the story you will hear today. Hello and welcome to Our People. I'm your host, Wayland, and I'm here tonight with Taran.
Hi, how
Um,
you doing?
Good. I would say you could just go ahead, tell us what you want us to know about you.
So, my name is Teran Rinehart, and I am an ex-Menno, but I guess if we're going to hear about my story, it wouldn't start out with me. It actually started out with my grandma on my dad's side. Her name was Yolanda, and she used to live in Santiago, Chile. And she was born to an incredibly wealthy family. I mean, incredibly wealthy. She talks about being living in like multiple mansions. She wasn't even raised by her own parents. She had a nanny. And she talks about going to the yacht club and the country club and the symphony, and the orchestra, and drinking champagne and eating peaches on New Year's. And all of this extravagant wealth. She went to an all-girls Catholic boarding school and all of this. And anyway, when she got older, she got engaged to another very wealthy man, and she was so in love with him, just over the moon. Well, anyway, um, as I remember the story being told to me, a little bit before the wedding, a few weeks before the wedding, a very pregnant woman shows up on the front doorstep saying, "I'm going to have your husband to be his baby." And my
Okay.
grandmother was heartbroken, absolutely heartbroken. And she ran away and signed up to become a mail order bride. And she was bought by a man in Michigan. Now, the man had been wealthy at one point in time, but he had like a crippling gambling addiction and had gambled away his wealth. And he had been married before, and he and his previous wife had had 8 children, but they were all grown. And by the time that she died, because she passed away young, well, younger, um, they were so poor she didn't have a dress good enough to be buried in. The neighbors had to lend her one. And I don't know how he managed to afford my grandma, but he did. And my grandma went from living in this extravagant wealth to living in a two-room house with no electricity and no running water. And I can't imagine the horrific devastation that that must have felt for her, just being completely alone, being there, because that man was not caring or loving or good in any way. My dad would frequently talk about how his father was incredibly abusive, physically, verbally, and he had so many stories and scars on his body from that man. And that man wound up, like I said, he bought my grandma, and my aunt and my dad were born to them. Now, when my dad was 7, his father died. And my grandma, who had been forbidden to learn English, forbidden to drive, forbidden to get a job, forbidden to do anything outside of the home, had to suddenly learn how to do everything for herself. Um, so she did what she could, and she went and she got herself a job at the hospital, and she started working in the laundry department. And she worked hard. She worked really, really hard. And they wound up being able to go and afford to go and get another house that actually did have electricity and running water. And during this time, my grandma found an ad in the paper, and it advertised a song service for the Mennonite church. And my grandma loves music, loves music. So she went to the other girls in the laundry department. She said, "Do you see this? Do you see this? There's music here." And they said, "Oh, you can't go there. You can't go there. If you go there, they're going to kick you out. You can't go there." And my grandma said, "But then why would they advertise it?" And they said, "We don't know, but you can't go there." But my grandma she was going to go anyway because, well, she was terribly stubborn for one. And for two, she she wanted to. So she went and she knew there was a Mennonite working there at the hospital. And she went up and she talked to that Mennonite. She was like, "Is it true that anyone could come?" "Well, yeah, absolutely, anyone can come." So my grandma went. She was so scared, but she was so excited, and she went there. And she loved the music. And of course, you know how Mennonites are for new people. They love bombed her so hard. And pretty soon, before they knew it, she had a whole Mennonite family that was basically became their own family. And my dad would call them Grandpa and Grandma Schneider, and they were just thick as thieves, the whole lot of them. And they took my grandma right in, and they all got baptized into the church. And that's that's how my family got roped in the first place, was because of that one advertisement in the paper.
Where was that at? Was that in California or where?
That was in Carson City, Michigan.
Michigan. Okay.
Yep. Yep. That would have been in the 70s.
Okay.
That would have been in the 70s, I believe. Um, Early 70s. Anyway, it would have been a little bit later. It would have been around 76, 77, somewhere in there. Anyway, though, my my dad didn't stay in the church. His story is just as relevant to my story as mine is. He didn't stay in the church. He was, I'm not sure exactly completely what happened. I'm not sure if he left first or if the accident happened first. But I do know that he was engaged to a Mennonite girl in Louisiana. And she was in a car accident and she was killed. I think her name was Carolyn or something like that. Or Carol Ann, something like that. That's all I know about that bit. But anyway, he left the church and he was very, he hated it. And while he was out, my dad, I cannot defend him for this. And as much as we have as much as he has started to do better, I will never be able to excuse him for this. Because to me, it's not right in any way, shape, or form. When he met my mom at a party, she was 17. He was 25. And I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, that's fine. That's fine. She is almost 18." No, she was not 18. She wasn't 18. She was not 18. And if they are not 18, they're not an adult. I don't care about laws of consent. I don't care about anything like that. I am 25 right now. Me looking at a 17-year-old is like looking at a child. They are not
Yeah.
desirable to me in any way, shape, or form. Nobody my age should be looking at a 17-year-old in any way, shape, or form. That is disgusting. For that, I will always, always, always say that is an act of grooming. Because he and my mom got together not long afterwards, and they wound up living together, and they have been together ever since. I cannot excuse that in any way, shape, or form. If they had met when she was over 18, it would be a whole different story. I wouldn't care. I've had relations with people with much bigger age gaps, and it's not an issue because I was an adult when it happened.
Right.
When they got together and when they were living together, my mom was, the way that she was raised was her parents would always take her to her mother. Her mother was with her mother wasn't in too many stable relationships as far as I remember. Well, she was with one for most of my mom's life when she was at home, but then she wound up getting a divorce and carrying on with her other relationships, which I knew growing up. And anyway, but my grandma would always be taking my mom to different churches because, oh, that one's not going to tell me I can't drink. That one's not going to tell me I can't dance, so on and so forth, trying to find, the perfect church that fit her needs. And my mom was always, therefore trying to find one that would fit her, I guess. So every Sunday she would tell my dad, "Oh, let's go to that church. It has pretty windows. Oh, let's go to that church. It has pretty music. Oh, let's go to this church. It looks pretty." And my dad would just hate it. He hated it. He hated church. So finally one Sunday he said, "I'm going to take you to a real church." And my mom said, "Oh, like I haven't been going to real churches this whole time." And he wound up taking her to the Holdemans. And that is how he got her started. Because she was like, "You're right, it was different." And they started slow like they always do. And they love bombed her. And they got her into it. And it probably didn't help at all that my dad was there. And they were trying to, bring him back to the fold. Because wouldn't it be lovely if you could get 2-for-1? So they were married outside the church.
Okay.
They were married outside the church, but they did join shortly after. And I have never known my life. I never got to know a life that was not Mennonite. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I don't think I should have ever been born. I honestly don't know if I was planned. I don't think that my parents were ready to be parents, at least not for me. For my sister, who is just a year and a half younger than me, yes, but not for me. They at least maybe not for the type of child that I was. My dad, my earliest memory that I have, well, that's not true. My earliest memory is being a baby and somebody picking me up. I would have been less than a year old when that happened. My second earliest memory is my 3rd birthday. And my memory after that would have been in January when I was 3 years old. I know it was January because there was still some Christmas stuff up, but not too much. A little plate that I had made in Sunday school that was put up on the windowsill. And it was snowing really, really hard outside. There was like 3-foot drifts. My little sister and I were playing with our Barbie dolls. And we heard Mom and Dad start yelling. The reason I know I was 3 is because around that time we found out that Dad had been cheating on Mom right after she had given birth to his first son. I don't know why he felt the need to. I don't know why anybody cheats. But I do remember him screaming and screaming and screaming at her. And her crying and crying and crying and yelling back, but not nearly as much as he was. And Lily and I were so scared that we crawled underneath a quilt that my mom was making for me. I still have that quilt to this day, actually. But we crawled underneath that quilt and we were sitting underneath there hiding, holding on to each other. And we were so scared. We were shaking and sobbing with snot running down our faces and tears. And I said, Lily, we have to run away to Grandma's house. To be fair, our Grandma Zamron, the one that had come from Chile, lived like 2 miles, 3. There's no way that a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old could have walked that in a blizzard. But I was so scared. I was more afraid of my dad in that moment and what he was going to do to my mother than I was of freezing to death in that blizzard. And she said, no, you can't do it. You can't. And I said, no, Lily, we have to do it. We have to do it. We have to leave. And she said, you can't do it. If you do, I'm going to tell Dad. I said, Lily, if you tell Dad, you know that he's going to get mad. You can't tell Dad. And it went back and forth for some time. And it just increasingly, like me getting more and more terrified that she was going to go tell my dad, and her getting more and more terrified that I was going to leave. But I kept trying to be like, no, if we leave, then like we're going to be safer there and we can go get help and it will be okay and the yelling will stop and everything, right? How fucked up is it that a 3-year-old is thinking about saving their parents' life? Anyway, that should never have been a thought in my little head. A 3-year-old shouldn't be having that adult of a thought. But I did. And I said, Lily, I have to go. And she said, if you do, I'm going to tell Dad. I said, Lily, I have to. Just stay here. You'll be safe. And she said, if you leave, I'm going to go get Dad. I said, Lily, you can't. You can't. And she said, then don't go. And I said, I have to. And she ran out from underneath the quilt, and I knew I was done. I knew I was done. I knew that was it. And sure enough, I heard my dad yell. And I heard him come, stomp, 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 stomp towards me. We were hiding in the office. And I will never forget how he loomed in that doorway. And he yelled for me. And I came crawling out from underneath that quilt. And I was so scared. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand up.
Yeah.
And his eyes were huge. They were so big. They seemed like they could see everything. And he had this giant Cheshire cat smile on his face that just stretched from ear to ear. And he said, "You want to leave? You want to leave?" And I said, "No." Because at that moment, I wasn't going to leave. He was standing in the door. There's no way I was going to leave.
Right.
"You want to go? You want to go? There's the door." "I can't go. I don't have shoes on." "You don't need shoes. Get out." "Oh, you don't need a coat. You want to leave? Get out." And the whole time, there's a giant smile on his face, and he just points to the door. And my mom came running up right behind him, was trying to like pull him away and trying to tell him to leave me alone. And she started crying. And for the first time in my life, but not the last, my dad turned to me with those giant eyes and that giant Cheshire cat smile and said, "Are you happy you made your mom cry?" I got my ass beat for that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yep. For daring to, I don't know what. I honestly don't remember why. But that sort of thing happened a lot after that, where he would get pissed off little things. He wound up getting expelled from the church for that cheating thing, actually, and we wound up moving out of the house for 6 months. And in my unprofessional opinion, I believe my dad to be an undiagnosed bipolar. I believe that he has like undiagnosed bipolar and definitely PTSD and narcissism. And the narcissism is not a slam against him. It's not an insult. It's simply I don't think he can control it. I genuinely do not think it is in his capability to control it. I think he is a textbook narcissist.
Yeah.
Because yeah, little things would set him off. And it would seem to be the most random ones. Like the crime, I mean, the punishment never fit the crime, ever. Like there would be, oh, let's see here. When I was 5, he told us my grandma would always, whenever she would take us kids with her, she would always take us to go get bug juice. That was her thing. My grandma Zamron loved getting us bug juice. She loved it. That was her thing. She would always get us chocolate and bug juice and candy, and that was just what she did. And anyway, my dad had told us, "Don't ask for juice. We have some at home." We had Hawaiian Punch in as a kid. I hated Hawaiian Punch. For me, it just tasted disgusting. It tasted like dryer softener. I mean, like softener. It just bleh, disgusting. Um. Anyway, as we pull up to the gas station, Grandma Zamron turns around and asks us, "You want the bug juice?" "Yeah." We didn't. I didn't ask for it. She asked me. So
Right.
I mean, I figured it was fine, right? And Dad said, "Mom, no, Mom, no. We have juice at home. It's fine." "No, they wanted to buy juice. I get them to buy juice." And she just about tossed herself out of a moving car. She wanted to get bug juice. Well, when we got home, my dad was furious. And he grabbed a metal hairbrush and he started wailing on me. And he beat me so hard with it that the head of the metal hairbrush flew off and flew across the room. Do you know how hard you have to hit somebody to have the head of a hairbrush fly across the room?
Wow.
And that was on a 5-year-old. Have you seen how tiny 5-year-olds are? That's the sort of thing that would happen all the time. But I also learned really, really fast that my dad would leave my little sister alone. And he tended to only go after me and my brother and my mother. Well, if he only goes after me and Ethan and mom, well then, okay, what else? There's also another pattern here. He can't be angry with two people at once. He can only be angry with one of us. The other person he'll be annoyed with, but he won't be angry with them, not like how he will be with the other.
Yeah.
So, what I can do is, I know, I can save them. I can save them. It can be okay. If dad is getting mad at mom or Ethan, I can make him mad at me, so he'll come after me instead. And then they'll be okay. I don't like it when he yells at me, but it's better than him being mad at them. Sometimes I would let them get yelled at or beaten. Ethan would get beaten, not mom. Because I was tired of having to take the blows every single time. And I felt so guilty for it. I remember hearing my little brother get beat and crying and crying and crying and just feeling so guilty for it because I knew that I could have antagonized my dad into leaving Ethan alone. But I was just so tired and I just didn't want to. Not tonight. Not today. I just School was a lot, you know? I was not well liked in school. Not at all. I had two little friends, and even then, they didn't really hang around me. And whether that's because of undiagnosed autism or at the time, or whether that was because of the fact that I couldn't relate to any of my friends,
Hmm.
I don't know. But it's not like I don't know. I really hated it. Growing up, it was miserable. I didn't have friends in school very much. I mean, they were friendly to me sometimes, but I got left out more than not. And I really did want to be included, and I really did want to be a normal kid, but I just didn't know how to fit in. I really didn't. I still it's still hard for me to understand social norms and boundaries and stuff. And like I said, I don't know if that's just because I just never learned those skills growing up or if that's just the tism bit. I don't know. But there was a lot of things that made it so I didn't get there was a lot of reasons. But it was also because of the fact that I wasn't well popular in school, that my dad also didn't like me. I don't know why that was a thing, but he also didn't like that. He didn't like that I didn't fit in. And I wish I knew why that irked him so bad. Maybe it's because he was popular and not having all popular kids was a slap for him. But whatever the reason, that was another reason that made him just, he hated it. He hated it. And he never missed an opportunity to tell me, why can't you be more like your sister? My little sister Lily got along with people famously. She was perfect at fitting in. She got along with people so well. And I envied her so bad for that. I wanted to be like her so much. I'm honestly glad it didn't happen, because otherwise I probably would still be stuck a Mennonite if I had, if I had fit in. I probably never would have found the strength to leave. Because let's face it, when we're comfortable in our niche, we're comfortable in our niche, that's where we tend to stay.
Yeah.
And I probably would have never left. Even though there was more than one reason why I did. One of the main reasons that I am no longer Mennonite is because I'm queer and I'm trans, and I am happy to go and let people know that. So for anybody watching who doesn't think that there are queer trans people in the Mennonite church, oh yes there are. Oh yes there are. And I will have you know, I was so fucking gay. It was not even funny. It was not even funny. And I knew that I was queer from the time I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have a name for it. And I didn't know that it wasn't quote unquote normal for Mennonites. I didn't know that it wasn't normal for them. All I knew that I had to hide it because I knew that like my mom and dad would probably be mad because my mom had thrown away her art book because she thought my little brother was going to get into it and see all the pictures of the old paintings of naked women, but I was the one who liked that. I ripped every single picture of every single naked woman out of that book and I hid them. And I would just sit there and stare at them for hours and hours. And then I would try drawing them. And my mom would be like, oh, don't you think you should draw some clothes on her? And I'd be like, no, I like her like this. I didn't have a name for what I am now. I identify as gender fluid, which is underneath the trans umbrella. It just means that I don't identify as strictly a man or a woman. I feel like a little bit of both, sometimes more one or more the other. But when I was growing up, I didn't have a name for that. I didn't know that that existed. And to me, all that existed was there's men and there's women, and that's it. So I knew that I did not want to be a girl. I did not want to be that. So I would pray every single night that I could be a boy. And I was so upset every single morning when I would wake up and I wasn't a boy because, well, God grants all your prayers, right? If you really believe it, then God grants your prayers and you're supposed to get your prayers answered. Why am I not a boy? This doesn't make any sense. And it didn't work. And also really just annoyed me. And I think that I don't know if my dad ever caught on to that, but I knew when he caught on later in life, when I was like 16 and way more vocal about it, that he was, oh, you should have heard. You should have heard it. But at that point, I no longer gave a shit. So it was neither here nor there to me. But anyway, so going back to when I was young, I was a queer, autistic little kid in school who didn't have any friends, who had a lot of abuse going on at home, physical, verbal, mental, emotional. I couldn't fit in to save my life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any resources. I didn't know that there were such things. Because anytime that I would try to threaten my dad with the police, because I did that one time when I was like 7 or 8. I remember saying, because I had heard something about like calling the police or something on TV or something at the doctor's office. And I remember saying something like that, and my dad just laughed at me and he said, "Yeah, go ahead and call the police, and all they're going to do is go and laugh at you and they're going to tell me to beat you harder."
Wow.
I often wonder what my life would have been like if I would have made that call. I really, really wonder. Because in so many ways, my life would have been significantly better had I gotten taken out of that home. That's not to say that I don't think that there was moments where my parents did love me. I'm sure, like I can actually remember moments where I truly felt like my dad did love me. I truly did feel like he did love me. But he was not meant to be a parent.
Mm-hmm.
All kids deserve parents, but not all parents deserve kids. And as much as I love him, he was never meant to have kids. He was never meant to parent them. Ever. Ever. He destroyed me in so many ways that he cannot acknowledge. I will honestly say there were good times in my childhood. I don't want anybody to go and think that my dad was some horrible monster all the time. And honestly, the moments where he did love me and he was good were worse than the ones where he was being awful. Because in those moments, in those times, I would believe him, at least when I was young. I would genuinely believe that my dad loved me and that he was making a difference. He was making a change. He was going to do better. He wasn't going to beat me anymore. He wasn't going to scream horrible things at me. He wasn't going to drag me out of my bed to go and drag me downstairs. He wasn't going to hurt my mom or my siblings anymore. I would genuinely believe him. He would do nice things sometimes, like take us to the zoo, take us to the aquarium. And I loved that. And it was so much fun. And they would be my favorite memories until the next time something horrible happened. And then all of a sudden I would be hit with "I do so much for you. I took you to the zoo last weekend. This is how you repay me."
Yeah.
Anything good that happened, I quickly learned, was conditional. I could no longer fully enjoy anything good because anything good that happened, you knew had a giant price tag attached. Anything good that happened, I knew I was going to hear about for weeks to come, months even, depending on
Yeah.
how big it was. And The scariest part was if there was ever anybody around, anybody who would randomly show up, the switch that he would make from screaming in my face, telling me that I was horrible and useless and that I was, well, what was it? That I was useless, that I was stupid, that I was disrespectful, that I wasn't a real Christian. And that thing, he would say things like that people that I respected, that he knew that I respected, that he would say, you know, they come and talk to me about you, right? You know that they come and tell me all these things that they see about you, right? Right. He would go from screaming to me about like all that to suddenly there would be a knock at the door and suddenly, oh, how are you doing? Come right on in. Oh, it's good to see you. How
Yeah.
are you? Welcome here. The switch was night and day.
Yeah.
And you knew that you didn't say a word. You didn't say a word. Because if you said anything, well then, oh no. They're just, you know how kids are. They're just exaggerating. You know, they're just upset.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff happened. I got screamed at so much. Anyway, we wound up moving when I was 9 out to Washington State. I hated Michigan living there as a kid, but I hated Washington more. I hated Washington infinitely more. Not only were the people there rude and catty, there was nobody to be friends with. They put me in a class where I was the oldest person there, and I was smarter than every single person in that grade. I was smarter than the teachers. You know it's bad when as awful as my parents were, that even they agreed I hit every bad teacher.
Yeah.
You know it's bad when that happens. I was smarter than every single teacher that I had. And you know that is just bad. But Mennonite teachers are shit. Mennonite teachers are shit anyway. They don't get any education. They all have 8th grade educations. And most of them are only there to find a husband. That is the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
I didn't have any friends really. There was one girl who I was kind of friends with on and off again. And there was one girl who was 2 grades above me who I was in love with. I was head over heels, right over the moon in love with her. And it was lucky for me that at the same time I was also in love with her cousin,
Yeah.
who was the preacher's boy. So it was an excellent excuse to be like, no, I really want to go over to her house for a sleepover so that way I can, you know, be near his house because his house is just down the road and I could just like sit there and like ogle his house because like I might get a glimpse of him.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so creepy. I was so creepy as a kid. I had like Mennonites don't date. So some of them, including me, didn't learn personal boundaries very well growing up.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that. I was so smitten with him. I was so smitten with him. I was smitten with her too, but mostly with him. Um But she was my little oasis in that desert. Well, everybody else out there was catty and rude and mean and nasty and just, well, they just want you to know, like, when is the next deal and, like, when are they going to have to get the next dress? And if you don't have the right kind of dress and if you don't have the right kind of deal done, then you are just, well, you're just not worth it. It's not going to work out and you're not going to be accepted. Nobody's going to like this. Nobody's going to like you. Nobody's going to accept you.
Yeah.
If you weren't, those were most of the girls, but not her. She was funny. She was fun. She was awesome. We would go tearing to church at 103 miles an hour with the radio blasting as loud as it could go, so hard that I could feel the vibrations in my sternum. And turning it off just right before we could, like, get within earshot of the church.
Yeah.
It was really, really good to have someone. We had plans to run away together. She didn't know that I was in love with her, and I was content with just not saying anything forever
Yeah.
because I couldn't. We were Mennonites. Like, if I tell anybody about this, they're gonna freak out, and even I know better than to do that. She understood a little bit of the things that I was going through because her dad was also incredibly abusive. But she wound up leaving to get a teaching job. And every time that she came back, she was a little more distant until she wasn't the person who I was friends with anymore.
Yeah.
And I will always miss her. I will always miss her, and I will always be grateful to her too. I I endured a lot of abuse from my dad that was mostly just getting my ass beat, getting screamed at, getting that sort of thing happening, protecting my brother, protecting my mother. Whenever he would start going after them, then I would start yelling at him instead. And he would start, or like say something or do something that I knew would irritate him, and he would come after me instead. And it worked. It worked. 90% of the time it would work. 10% of the time it would piss him off so bad he would just, like, well, not 10% of the time. 5% of the time it would piss him off so bad that he would go stomping away somewhere else and he would leave everybody alone. And 5% of the time it wouldn't work and he would carry on doing what he was doing.
Right.
Anyway, what was I gonna say? This all carried on and it was basically business per usual until I was about 11. And when I was 11 was the first time that I really remember something that I remember really coming home to me, that I don't think my dad actually loves me at all. Is when um sorry, these memories are a little bit tough to dig through sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't mean like hard as in like this is hard for me to do, like emotionally. I mean hard as in like physically hard to remember, because I was diagnosed with DID, multiple personalities. And I say um but in truth the person that this happened to wasn't me. It was the first person who lived in this body who dealt with this, most of this. And I'm not, I can dig through some of the memories. It's a little hard sometimes. Sitting on the toilet, getting my hair done for the first time in a head covering. Had been baptized as a Mennonite not that long before. Like a couple days prior, but it was my first time getting my hair done for school. I think. Maybe not the first time. But I wasn't able to do my own hair yet. Anyway, my mom was doing my hair. And we were talking, and I don't remember about what. But whatever it was, my mom kind of snapped at me a little bit, and I was like, what? Like, big deal, big whoop, or whatever. Like, it wasn't like a whatever. It was just a kind of my mom and I just discussing something, but I was kind of like annoyed at her. She was kind of annoyed at me, sort of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't from what I remember, it wasn't serious. It wasn't a serious thing. Like neither one of us were very bent out of shape about it. We were just kind of annoyed at each other, from what I remember. Anyway, my dad came in there and started screaming in my face. Screaming in my face, which again, nothing new. But I started crying, absolutely sobbing. And I was like, and he called me, what was it? Something like a disrespectful asshole or something like that. Something to that extent. Or disrespectful little bitch. That was it. Disrespectful little bitch. I got called a disrespectful little bitch. I was 11 in third grade. And I got screamed at and called a disrespectful little bitch. And I started sobbing. And I was like, you're right. That's all I am. I'm just a disrespectful little bitch. And for whatever reason, that of all things pissed him off so much. For the first time in his life, he reared back and popped me in the face so hard that I started instantly gushing blood out of my nose and mouth. And then there wasn't enough room for the blood to come out fast enough, and I coughed up a golf ball sized blood clot. And my mom grabs me, shoves me over the sink, and starts screaming at my dad. And my dad started screaming at her. My mom started crying, and then my dad did the classic, "Are you happy you made your mom cry?" Then he drove us to school. And one of the teachers saw me bleeding out of my mouth and was like, "What happened?" And I said, "My dad punched me in the face." And Mennonite teachers are not mandated reporters. If I could help make any law that there is, I would mandate that all teachers be mandatory reporters for this reason. Somebody, anybody should have gone to help. If you see any little child bleeding out of their mouth and they tell you that their parent punched them in the face,
Yeah.
you should instantly get the authorities involved. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But she didn't do it. She went to my siblings instead. And because they didn't see it happen, because they were eating breakfast when it happened and we were in the bathroom back down the hallway, they told her that I was lying. And nothing was ever done. And after school, that's when my sister was like, "Why did the teacher ask us if dad punched you in the face?" I said, "Because he did." And she goes, "No, he didn't." And I said, "Yes, he did." And she goes, "Oh, well, I thought you were lying."
Wow.
Because dad had never gone that far before. He had beat our asses, yeah, but you can't see those. You can hide those bruises. You can hide those marks.
Right.
You don't have to look at those. But the face, that was a first. I'm kind of honestly impressed that he did that. But that was the first time that I remember thinking that I don't think my dad actually loves me.
Yeah.
After school, he wanted to hug me and everything, and I hugged him back only because I felt like if I don't hug him back and if I don't accept his apology, I feel like worse is going to happen. And after that, I kept a packed backpack in my closet.
Hmm.
I didn't know where I was going to run, but I knew I was going to run away at a moment's notice if I had to. My little child head, I had no idea where I was going to go. I think that my idea was to go to LA because I wanted to be an actress. Because I don't know why I thought I could make it, but I was a child who had no idea about the real world, and that was the idea that I had, that was going to be the best course of action for me. And so I had two pairs of leggings, two t-shirts, five pairs of underwear, three socks, a hairbrush, and a copy of The Wizard of Oz. Because that's all you need to run away, right? Oh, I kept a packed backpack with me from the time I was 11 till the time that I was 17.
Wow.
And it was always in my closet. And it was always like, you have to have a plan. As I got older, I formulated a better plan. And it stayed the same. LA was going to be my destination. And as I got older, when I turned 14, I found out that there was a bus that ran from a nearby town and that it would cost me $20, or no, wait, $40. And so I saved up $40 for my birthday and I kept it in that backpack, and I was going to have $40 with me, and that way I could get a ticket to go down there, and that would be it. And that way I can make sure that I could be safe. And that was my safety net for the longest time. That I will never run away because I have to save my brother and I have to save my mom. But if he ever goes off the deep end and kills them, then I can run. Then I can do it. Then I'll be free and then I can go. Because they probably won't see it coming, but I was on high alert with him. I was on incredibly high alert all the time. And mind you, I didn't really I would antagonize him, but not too much. I would yell at him, but not too much. Not until I got older. But that's later. When I was 13, we found out that he had been cheating on my mom for over 10 years. Do you realize what that means? He was cheating on my mom. Remember how I said that he was cheating on my mom when I was 3? And he got
Right.
kicked out for 6 months? That means a few months after he got reaccepted, he got a new girlfriend. And he kept her from the whole time that we moved up until I was 13. My mom would come to me crying in the middle of the night and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I would tell her, I would be like, leave him. Leave him. Mom, you have to leave him. And she'd be like, I can't. And now being older, I realized that my mom was groomed by my dad. My dad groomed a child. He brainwashed her into joining that church. Now I understand why she didn't leave him, because my mother has been with my father longer than she was not. My mother does not really remember a life without him.
Yeah.
As much as I hate to say it, I don't think my mother will ever be free of my father until he dies. With any luck, that'll happen soon before he can fuck up colossally again. And I know that's a heartless thing to some people, but I don't think my dad can help himself. So I would rather him get his shit straightened out and die before he can fuck it up again, rather than put my mom through that again, because I don't think he can help himself. I really don't. Anyway, my mom would be crying and crying, and I would be like, Mom, you have to leave him. You have to leave him. Do you see how he treats me? Do you see how he treats Ethan? My brother, my little brother, is so-and-so years old, and do you know the kind of things that he still does because he is so traumatized? I won't say it here because I feel like that's an invasion of my brother's privacy. But I will say that my brother was so psychologically traumatized that he was behind on a lot of things.
Right.
He was behind on a lot of things because of that. My little brother went from being this happy-go-lucky, sweet little boy who loved people more than anything. He was so sweet. When he would see people bullying me at school, because I got bullied so much, especially in Washington. People made fun of me all of the time. Like it was a daily occurrence. People would make fun of me. I was the laughingstock of the school. I was the easiest target that there was. My little brother would stand up for me. He would stand up for me, and he would tell people to knock it off. And whenever mom and dad would be fighting or whatever, he would start crying and he'd be like, just can't we all just get along? Why? He was so sweet. My brother was one of the kindest, funniest, sweetest, most open people ever. And I loved my little brother so much. That's why I tried so hard to protect him. But I didn't do enough.
Yeah.
It was never my job to protect him. But I did. I tried to. Because my parents didn't.
Right.
My brother now is sullen and quiet and solitary. He barely speaks to me. And I don't know if that is because I live a life that is so incredibly different from him, or if that's just because my parents have brainwashed him so badly against me. I really don't know why that is. But he is no longer that sweet and loving person that he once was. And it genuinely, that to me will be one of my greatest regrets, that I did not do more to protect him. I will forever be sorry. And I don't know if you'll ever hear this, Ethan, but I am truly, truly sorry I did not do more. And I truly love you, and I truly wish that I could have done better. It wasn't my job, but I wish I had done more. I begged my mom to leave my dad, begged her, pleaded with her, but she wouldn't. And like I explained before, I know now why she did it, but back then it felt like it was just another, you don't really care. It always felt like my mom, I know I talked a lot about my dad, but it always felt like my mom, like she would try. She would try up to a certain extent. But I think that it kind of was the same thing of how I felt. That sometimes it was just easier to let us take the heat than it was for her.
Yeah.
And I don't blame her. I really don't. I don't blame her for wanting a little bit of respite. But I wish that she had listened to her parents when they told her that my dad was no good and that he was trouble and that she should have never married him. I wish that she would have listened. I really, really do.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, anyway, so when we found out all of this, that my dad was cheating again, of course he got kicked out of the church. And this time he wasn't in Michigan where they're much more lenient. He was in Washington where they were incredibly stringent. And so, of course, he was out incredibly fast and he was out for years. And I think what he tried to do at first was he tried to do what he did in Michigan and he tried to go and buddy up with them. And well, when he found out in short order that that wasn't going to work, then he got angry. And he got so angry. He got so angry. And became very unhinged very fast. He would go, that's when I would say that his bipolar really, really was like his manic episodes were so insane because one minute he would be completely happy and fine and everything would be great, and the next second he would be screaming in our faces with that Cheshire cat grin and those giant rolling eyes and the towering over us. But I was getting older and I was getting really tired of getting yelled at, you know? Like
Yeah.
I was 13 by now, and I finally one day he went and what did he do? It was, oh, he had told me something like that I needed to clean the toilet or something. I needed to clean the bathroom, or I needed to do the dishes, something like that. It was clean the dishes, I think. And so I washed the dishes. And then I was in the office cleaning something up, and then he comes stomping in there screaming at me that like, I told you to do the dishes. And I said, I did do them. And he said, oh yeah, then why is there dishes in the sink? And then my mom was like, Tony, I put those in the sink. And so at that moment, I don't know what possessed me, but I was like, yeah, maybe you should have gone and checked with other people before yelling at me. Or something like that. And that was the first time that I really stood up for myself. And oh, he was mad. He was like, you think you're so smart, don't you? And I said, yeah, I really do. And my mom was like, don't, stop it. Both of you, stop it. But I was really happy because for the first time in my life, I finally managed to stand up for myself.
Yeah.
And what's more, I got away with it. This opens a whole new door of possibilities. And so, time goes on a little bit, and he learned pretty fast, and so did I, that I could start standing up for myself, because the minute that he would start screaming at me about his favorite line about me not being a real Christian, because that was his favorite thing. He would start screaming at me like, "Oh, you're not a real Christian. You're so disrespectful," and this and that and the next thing. And I would turn it right around with the, "Neither are you. You're expelled for cheating. I don't see how that's very Christian of you." And you should have seen the fury on his face. Oh, he was so angry. He would get so angry, but he doesn't have a retort for that. Not
Right.
yet. Not yet. You're never gonna let that go, are you? You're never gonna let that go. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And that's kind of how I started to learn that you need to start speaking up for yourself. So I started, whenever we would go into revivals once a year, I started being a lot more open with the ministers about the abuse that I was suffering at home. And I started realizing really quick, because I had been like sort of open with them from the time that I had started having revivals. Like started going to revivals, started having the what were they called again?
Which part?
Where you sit in the room with the ministers.
Oh, just the visits or the
Yeah,
you
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the little visits. Whenever I would have the visits with the ministers, I would always be a little bit open, but I would never tell them the full scope of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I started being a lot more open. And that's also about the time that I started realizing that these ministers aren't doing shit. They really should have been doing something, it feels like.
Yeah.
Kids should not be experiencing this and not having, if someone reports these things to you, it seems like you should be reporting this to somebody, right? But who am I to question? I don't know. It just seems fishy. Just seems fishy. Well, that's about the time that I started questioning the church. And because, like, I had always questioned religion as a whole, but that's the time that I really started questioning the church, is when I started getting older and started being like, okay, I have, like, let you know for years and years and years and years and years that I have been being abused, and nothing has been done about it. You have not reported it to the authorities. You have not removed my dad from the home. You have not done anything at all. How? Why is this allowed to continue? This doesn't seem right. And that's, like I said, that was when I really started questioning things. When I was 16, which I know that's a little bit of a jump from the time that I was 13 to the time that I was 16, but that was about, I don't think my dad got reaccepted until I was 17 or 18. He wasn't reaccepted until then. But when I was 16, I was at a youth deal and I hated going to youth because I loved it at first. I loved it because it was a respite from mom and dad's bullshit and their constant fighting. But Christmas Eve, we or the Christmas Eve party or whatever it was. It wasn't Christmas Eve itself. It was like the Christmas party for the youth group. There was this girl named Shelley Rhodes, and she was the ringleader for the youth group in the Othello youth group, and she was evil. She was the most vile, evil person I have ever met in my entire life. And I have met some truly evil people. This girl, from the time that I was in school, all the way up until she got married, made it her life's mission to make my life miserable. Absolutely miserable. And nobody did anything about it. And everybody knew that that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things that, like, it was Mennonite bullying, as in, like, I would show up to a volleyball game in a new dress, and she would be like, "Oh, I see you're wearing a new dress." Uh, yeah. Who gave it to you? Implying, that I always wear hand-me-downs because I couldn't sew. That
Right.
wasn't something I was interested in learning. My mom didn't have time to teach me. She was constantly working because my dad wasn't a farmer or a welder or some other Mennonite thing. He was constantly getting a different job, constantly, you know, can't keep a job to save his life. So my mom didn't really have time to teach me. She had time to teach my sister, but I just wasn't really interested in learning. I liked reading instead, and I had my
Yeah.
nose buried in a book too much. Anyway, she she was like, "Oh, who gave it to you?" Uh, my mom made it. Oh, your mom made it. Cackles off with her cronies. And that's the kind of like it doesn't seem like that would be like a big thing. But all of the sudden, my brand new dress that I was so proud of, all of a sudden I hated it because it just, you know, didn't feel right because my mom made it for me, and that just feels shameful all of a sudden. And of course, nobody says anything. I know some of the youth leaders tried to make me feel better about it, and they were nicer to me, and I really appreciated them. But at that particular the time that I finally hated youth group was that Christmas party when I was sitting there reading a book because that night my dad and my mom had had another screaming match. And when I had left the house, my mom was sobbing. And it was one of those nights where, okay, I can stay home and save my mom, or I can go and get some peace. I just don't have the energy to save my mom tonight. I'm gonna go. I'm sorry, mom. So I went and I got there and I was sitting there reading a book and just by myself off in a corner. No one was talking to me anyway. I wasn't a popular, like I said, I was a highly unpopular person. It wasn't a big deal. Anyway, all of a sudden Shelly comes stalking up to me and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, um, reading a book. Why? Uh, because I wanted to and no one was talking to me. Well, I'm talking to you. Um, Oh, okay. Sure. That's fine. I don't mind. Well, why are you still reading the book? I don't know. I want to. Well, if you're gonna do that, then you should just go home because like nobody wants you here. Oh. And a bunch of other people started chiming in. Yeah, you should just go home. No one wants you here. Yeah, you should just go home. The youth leaders didn't say a single word. In fact, they started laughing. And I just, I sat there and I could barely make it outside before the tears started falling down. I got out to my car and I drove home. And a trigger warning for anybody that has a hard time with uh there's a lot of trigger warnings for this anyway. You could put these in the description, I guess, or whatever. I decided that night on the way home, I just didn't want to live anymore. I was 16, right before Christmas, and I was just done. My parents didn't want me. The youth didn't want me. Nobody wanted me. I didn't have any friends. I had no one. I had nowhere to go. I had no hope of doing anything. For fuck's sake, I was queer. But I can't say that.
Yeah.
There's no even if, it doesn't work out for me like marrying a Mennonite boy or whatever, there's no plan B of getting to marry, a Mennonite girl. There's no hope for me. I'm just a freak who just can't make it. So I went home and I went to the family medicine cabinet and I opened it really, really quietly and I got out the giant family size Costco size thing of ibuprofen because I knew it was going to destroy my liver. I was well aware of that, and I also know that if you try to commit suicide, they will not give you an organ transplant. So I knew that even if it doesn't kill me right away, it will give me organ failure and I will die. There was also a few other meds too that I wound up grabbing, and I can't remember off the top of my head which ones that they were. But I do remember grabbing some sleeping pills too, that I was also going to take all of them because with any hope, I was going to try and fall asleep on my back so I could throw up and choke on my own vomit. It was very meticulously thought out. It wouldn't have worked, granted, because the meds that I would have taken they wouldn't have worked like that. Most meds won't work like that.
Yeah.
But I was ready to do it. Like it was gonna happen. I sent out a text to two people in the youth who I didn't consider them friends, but I considered them close enough to friends. And to one girl who I had recently become friends with, well, like acquaintance friendship with, at my job of babysitting at the local Baptist church once a week while the ladies had their Bible study. It wasn't a Mennonite gig, and the girl wasn't a Mennonite. She was Baptist. But she was fun, and we had recently become friends, and it wasn't like close friends, but it was close enough to where I knew that she would miss me if I died, and I didn't want her to worry. So I sent her a text too, along with the 3 other people. I wrote a letter to my parents and to everybody else, basically telling them, like, this is all kind of your fault. Treat my siblings better. And if there's anybody else who's ever like me in the future, don't treat them the way that you treated me. Just don't, because that's how this winds up happening.
Right.
And anyway, about the time that I finished that letter, my phone buzzes with a message from the Baptist girl. And she was like, hey, I've got something like really interesting to show you. You want to come over to my house real quick? And I was like, it's almost midnight. And she was like, yeah, but it's like really cool. I really want to show you. And I was like, well, if it's my last night alive anyway, may as well. So I drove over to her house, and it wound up being like this cheesy, what was it? It was like a cheesy, like, Christian movie or something, or like, yeah, that's what it was. And it wound up like buffering partway through because like the disc was scratched. So we wound up changing it to Doctor Who. And I remember just sitting there with her, and we were just sitting there laughing about it. And all of a sudden she turns to me and she goes, you aren't going to do it, right? And I was like, what? And she goes, the message that you texted me, that wasn't a regular message. You're not going to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh. I don't know why. And she started crying, and she hugs me and she says, because I don't want to lose you. And in that moment, I just started bawling because it wasn't a Mennonite. It wasn't my family. It wasn't anybody like that who was holding on to me and crying and begging me to stay. It was this girl who barely knew me.
Right.
And we just sat there and we cried and we cried and we cried in her orange and pink bedroom with the tons and tons of Doctor Who memorabilia because she was also nerdy like me. And after that, we became really good friends. I hated youth. And so sometimes I would say I was going to youth when instead I would go to her house and we would hang out. And we would just talk. And she was very Christian. And I was I was at the time very much like I had just kind of decided that, like, you know what? I'm kind of done with the Mennonites, but I don't know how done I am with them. Like, I don't know if I can leave because my whole life, my dad had always told me, if you ever leave, bad things are going to happen to you. Horrible things are going to happen to you, and they will all be your fault. My grandma my grandma and my aunt both got expelled from the church, or my aunt left. My grandma got expelled
Mm-hmm.
because my aunt had been accused of doing something that she My aunt had been accused of doing something that she did not do and had been wronged so badly that my grandma went to bat for her and was like, hey, you can't treat my daughter like this. That's
Right.
not the Christian way. Like, that's not okay to treat my daughter like that. And the the preachers were like, well, you know, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. It's fine. They didn't do anything. My grandma was like, you don't understand. Nothing is being done. You have to do something because my daughter was wronged. You have to do something. And they still wouldn't do anything. And my grandma got so angry about it that she wound up being kicked out for like a spirit of what was it? Like um what's it called?
Offense?
Yes, there you go. Spirit of offense. There you go.
Mhm.
She was kicked out for a spirit of offense. And she was so upset about that because my aunt had been shunned hard by so many people because well, it's clearly her fault. It's clearly her fault. It wasn't. And
Yeah.
when it came out that it wasn't her fault, oh, well, too bad. And my aunt wound up leaving for a plethora of reasons, but I would say that that also probably played a large factor into it. Although I can't say for sure. My aunt wound up becoming a horrible person later in life, and if she ever hears this, please go choke on a very large stick and get lost. She did horrible things.
Yeah.
Horrible things later in life. Anyway, um, but that's neither here nor there. My grandma, so due to all of the horrible things that she suffered in her life, like my dad, I'm pretty sure that she had bipolar. I'm pretty sure that she had PTSD from all of the trauma that she suffered. And anyway, she was uh, she she held on to stuff, you know? Like she would remember things like the people that she loved, she would hold on to that.
Hmm.
If people hurt her, you know, until you made it right, she would hold on to that too. But she would just, to me, it mostly comes across as like I just want justice. As soon as justice was provided, she probably would have left it alone.
Yeah.
But due to that fact that she was so, you know, wronged or whatever and never got it, she was a very cranky person. But obviously, I mean, I'd be cranky too if I went through all the things that she did. But I remember growing up, my dad telling me, if you ever leave the church, you're going to wind up like your grandma. You're going to be bitter and alone and angry. And do you really want that? Do you really want that? Do you want to be bitter and angry and alone? Because that's what happens to people who leave the church. And when I was 16, I was like thinking to myself, like, if I leave the church, like, I don't feel like, yeah, I'm going to be pissed. I wouldn't say bitter is how I would describe myself. Angry, yeah, but I don't necessarily think I'll necessarily wind up alone. I mean, I'm not that old, and I feel like I have kind of an like a whole life ahead of me to find somebody. Like I'm not that necessarily concerned about being alone either. And I don't know, like I was really trying to figure out like, okay, do I leave or do I stay? Do I stay or do I leave? Do I leave or do I stay? Because if I stay, I gotta go and deal with Mennonites. But people were always telling me, like, oh, if anybody ever leaves the church, it's probably going to be you. Oh, yeah, like, honestly, like, yeah, I'm kind of surprised that you haven't left the church yet, that sort of thing. And I was like, how fucking dare you? Like, that's rude as hell to tell anybody, like, let alone somebody who is questioning. Not
Yeah.
that they knew I was questioning, but it still was rude, terribly rude. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. So I left it alone, and I kept trying to be a good Mennonite. And I tried really, really, really hard. But when I was 16, around that time is when, 16 or 17, is when somebody started to rumor that I was a lesbian, which I'm not. I'm not. I want to point that out. I'm not. I like everybody. I like everybody.
Hmm.
I have a type. I have types, but I like everybody. I wish I was a lesbian, but I'm not. Anyway, um, that wound up ruining any chances for me to be a teacher
Yeah.
because the Othello preachers, would rather believe the rumor over me. And even though everybody knew that I was so infatuated with their son that I thought the sun rose and set out of his ass, that everybody knew it, including them. Everybody knew that I was in love with him. They still would rather believe the rumor than me and literally their own eyeballs. And so for that reason, I was not allowed to even think about going to teach, which was my biggest passion. I started teaching Bible school when I was 15. And so I was like, well, I can't teach, regular school. I'll teach Bible school. And so I did every single year until I left the church. I taught Bible school because I loved teaching. That was
Yeah.
my biggest passion, still one of my biggest passions. I love doing. But it was so much fun. I love teaching. To me, that is one of the greatest joys, is to just get people excited for subjects. And I tried to, like, keep the as I got older, I tried to keep the more God stuff out of it and tried to put more of the historical stuff in. Which, to be fair, now that I'm, out of it, I realize how flawed even that was. But I did what I could, and my kids loved me. They loved me, and I loved teaching. And I am still grateful to them, though, that I didn't get to go teach. Because, again, if I would have gotten to teach, I probably would have gotten to a different congregation, and maybe it would have been one where I would have gotten married to a Mennonite and I would have never left. If I had been able to teach, I would have never had an excuse to leave because I would have been doing something that I loved. So, again, I am incredibly grateful to them for taking that away from me. At the time, I wasn't, though. I was heartbroken. I was absolutely heartbroken. But I did everything else that I could to
Yeah.
try to be a good Mennonite. I tried so hard to be a good Mennonite. I was the one who talked the most in Sunday school. I was the one who contributed the most to that. I was, you know, I was happy to talk with older people about Christianity and stuff like that. I was happy to do that. And they loved it. They loved it when I would do that. The younger people these days just don't do this. Well, no, but I will. I will. I tried so hard to be a good Mennonite. It was never enough. I
Yeah.
couldn't shake those rumors. I couldn't shake the "you're just too different." I couldn't shake the whole "you don't belong." I tried, though. I tried really hard. I even went to what's it called? Class. Girls class. I even went to girls class.
Yeah.
I did. I did. I went to girls' class. I hated the curriculum. I hated the curriculum. The teacher was fun. And I loved the girls that I went with. And no, for anybody listening, and if any of them are listening, no, I did not have crushes on any of you. None of you are my type. I'm sorry. Um, but they were amazing. And I had a lot of fun with them. I didn't have fun with the youth though. The youth there that I was there with, they seemed rude and stuck up and snotty, just like every other youth group out west, just like every other Mennonite youth group that I seem to come across. Like I would find one or two that I would get along with, and every single other one there would be snotty and rude and just mean.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just I I didn't want to come home from that trip. I didn't want to come home from girls' class
Yeah.
because I knew what my life was going to be like. I should also give context for that too. So when I was 18, because I went to girls' class when I was 19. When I was 18, around that year, there started being this one Mennonite guy who started hanging out at our house more. And you know what that means if a Mennonite guy is hanging around your house more. Usually means that he's interested in somebody. Well, the only other person that he could be interested in, my sister, wasn't there. She was gone in Colorado for a year. And while she was down there, she was just, oh, well, there was this one guy who kept like leaving like Red Bulls in her car, and oh, you should hear her talk about him. And oh, she was just like, I mean, she wasn't really like they definitely were together, but like he kept buying her Red Bulls and she kept buying him Red Bulls, and like, that's like kind of like Mennonite flirting, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Well, anyway, he starts hanging out at our house all the time, and I was like, I didn't know what to think because like I liked him so much. I was so rude to him though. I was so mean. I because like I didn't know what to think. I was like, I really like him.
Yeah.
I really like him. Yeah. Hey, how's it going? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go read now. Bye. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do, but I really liked him. I really, really did. And then, anyway, like almost a year later, my sister comes back for Christmas. And I was so excited because when she came back for the first time since we were little kids, we all of a sudden had a good relationship. Because, mind you, the whole time that we were growing up, Lily and my youngest sister were my dad's favorite children. They could do no wrong. And I know I haven't specifically said that, but the only two people that the only two kids that were ever picked on or whatever were me and my brother. My sister didn't get yelled at a lot. She would tattle if there was anything, going on that she didn't like. She would, she would always like let my dad know. My dad knew to rely on her for information as much as anything. She was his informant. She would get close to me and then she would inform to him anything that I said that she thought that he would need to know.
Yeah.
I wanted a relationship so bad with my little sister, like how when we were kids. I wanted it so bad, but I couldn't get it. because anytime that I would trust her, she would turn around and slap that trust across my face, like, haha, fuck you. I'm gonna go and tattle to dad, and now you're screwed.
Yeah.
We had not been close since we were little, like I said. But when she came back from Colorado, all of the sudden, it was like we were little again. And she was wild and she was fun. And she wanted to watch a movie with me. And I was like, are you serious? You want to do that? Like, that's so bad. It's like,
Yeah.
Mennonites aren't allowed to watch movies, but like, sure, okay. Well, I mean, I would secretly watch them out in my room because my parents, they wouldn't let me sleep in the house. They had me sleep out in the garage, which was like, I don't know, 30 feet, 40 feet away from the house. It was out in a cinder block room. There was daylight between some of the cinder blocks. There was rats that would run up the walls, and spiders, and the concrete. There was a concrete floor that was uneven, so if you would not be paying attention, you would stub your toe in the middle of the night. It was so cold out there in the winter that if you did that, like even sometimes with the heater, like you could see your breath in the air in the morning.
Yeah.
You would get leaks in the ceiling when it rained. Like it was, nobody should have been living out there, but well, what were they going to do? It's not like when you buy a house, you got to go and you can have to make sure that, you've got room for all your kids. Like, oh, whoops, we forgot about one of our kids. Oh, well, you can sleep out in the garage, right? Anyway, though, I did like it though because at least it gave me space away from my parents,
Yeah.
and it was significantly safer. I could tell if somebody was coming because I could hear the garage door opening, and it would at least give me time, to hide anything real quick before they got out there. I did that so many times. But anyway, I would secretly connect to the neighbor's Wi-Fi and I would secretly watch, movies. And that was the worst thing that I did. It's terribly bad doing that, according to Mennonites. So when
Yeah.
my sister asked me to watch a movie, I was so happy that she wanted to do that. So I found like the most one that I thought that she would like, and she wound up loving it. It was Anastasia, you know, the DreamWorks, I think it was. Don
Hmm.
Bluth movie. It's so It's one of my best memories is laying in front of the pellet stove with my sister and quietly watching that together while everybody
Yeah.
slept. And I truly felt like I had my sister back. And it was amazing. And then it was either the next night or the night afterwards. We went to the youth Christmas party and oh fuck, I hate it. But I'll go because my sister's there and it's gonna be fine, right? So we went. And while we were there, I noticed that she was really flirting with this guy who had been coming around all year long. Like weirdly flirting with him. And he was kind of flirting back, and I was like, okay. So on the way home, I asked her jokingly, I was like, so when's the wedding? And she goes, who told you? And I was like, what? And she was like, who told you? And I was like, what do you mean? Turns out he was never interested in me. He was interested in her. And
Yeah.
so I was heartbroken. So I talked to one of my friends that whole night, or well, not the whole night. I talked to one of my friends for hours that night. And I was so disappointed, but I wanted to be happy for my sister. I really did. It was hard, but I loved her. And I wanted her to be happy, but it was really hard. It had gotten to the point where when my dad was like, I remember him like, he would do this thing like where we would sit down at a table and then he would start like yelling at me for something across the table. And then I would usually just take it. But when I was like 15, 16, one night I finally had enough. I just jumped up, slammed my hands on the table, and started screaming right back at him. And he was very taken aback because that never happened. Nobody ever questioned his authority. Well, it happened that night. And so
Yeah.
by this point, we were used to it. Like he was used to it. Like that I was going to, like, if he was going to say anything, he could expect me that I was going to be very blunt with him and he was not going to be able to go and get anything from me. And so he had kind of given up by that point, but not enough. And so he starts screaming at me that like, well, if you can't support this family, you can get out of this house. Well, that got me thinking, you know what? Maybe this is actually a good idea. Because if if I can get a place that's not here, maybe I can start experimenting a little bit with not being a Mennonite. Maybe I can start experimenting with seeing if being a Mennonite is actually for me, but I can do it in a place where my parents can't see or nobody else can see. And this way I can really know if I'm meant to be a Mennonite. Because if I'm going to be a Mennonite, then I need to be a Mennonite. But if I'm not, then what? But if I do go, then my dad won't yell at me anymore.
Right.
I won't have to put up with this BS. I will actually have a place that's all mine. Yes, I'm going to have to go and deal with more bills, but honestly, I feel like I can make it work. I feel like I can make it work. So I started, as like when my dad started screaming out more and more, I started putting a plan into action. So I started looking up apartments in a town that was about an hour away. And I had a plan that I was going to come down for the weekend and I would go to church on Sunday and then I would leave and I'd go back up there. And it was just close enough to where I could come down to church and it would be fine, but I could still go. And it would be, I could get a little distance. I could be a
Mhm.
little, I could be a little farther away. It would be okay, right? I could maybe, it wasn't leaving the Mennonites, right? Right? I'm not leaving the Mennonites. I'm just, you know, seeing, making sure. The Bible says to test the spirits. So I'm doing what the Bible says. So I found an apartment that was in my budget. It was going to be hard to do, but it was doable. I calculated all of the costs. I found a job that I could start up there. And I got everything ready. So the next night, when we sat down at the supper table and my dad yelled at me, "You can get out of this house then. You can find somewhere else to live." I said, "I am." And he said, "What?" And I said, "I'm moving out Tuesday."
Yeah.
"What? Wait, what?" "Yeah, you wanted me out of the house so bad, I'm moving Tuesday." Well, I didn't mean that. "Oh, no, you wanted me out of the house, I'm moving Tuesday." I, oh, well, he all of a sudden starts backtracking fast. He's backpedaling fast because, oh, wait, I'm all of a sudden going to lose control. I'm not going to be in control of you anymore. I'm not going to be able to, you're actually, oh, shit, this is not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted to happen at all. Well, he goes and gets up from the table, disappears, and a few seconds later, my phone rings, and it's the ministers, and they want to go and have a talk with me the next day. And so I go over there, and I'm like, huh. And the minister's like, well, we just don't know if we really want you moving over there. You know, it's so far, and there's so much room for sin, and we just don't know if that's a good idea. And the whole time I'm just internally thinking, you stupid fucks. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get away from you. I'm trying to get away from you. I'm trying to get away from you. Can't you get the hint?
Yeah.
But no, my mom instead found a place for me that was considered to be better, even though it was technically only 20 minutes closer. But I wound up living there. And I lived there for almost a year before I wound up losing it due to financial reasons. And I had to move back in with my parents for a few months. And during that few months, I tried really hard to be a good Mennonite again. And that's when because like, while I was living there, I was not living Mennonite at all, unless a Mennonite would show up.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was living there, I remember the first time that I went out and I sat in a park dressed in a t-shirt and jeans. And I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, the sky isn't opening up, the ground isn't opening up, the sky isn't opening up, the ground isn't opening up, the sky isn't opening up, the ground isn't opening up. I feel like if you die right now, you're so gonna be dead. You're so gonna die. You're so gonna go to hell. Are you though? Are you though? Are you? Are you though? Actually think about it though. Are you? Okay. How do you feel though? Honestly, I feel kind of happy. I kind of feel like myself. It's feels like me, I guess. And so I started doing it more and more because it just all of a sudden I didn't feel like I was wearing a costume like I always felt when I was dressed like a Mennonite. I all of a sudden started being more like myself, and I made friends who weren't Mennonite, more of them. And I was just all of a sudden, life was going better,
Mm-hmm.
and it was okay. You know, being there in that little place. Like I said, though, I did eventually wind up losing it. And I had to move back in with mom and dad. And when that happened, oh, you should have seen the crocodile tears that my dad cried. You would have thought that somebody was asking him to bury a live puppy versus give shelter to his eldest.
Yeah.
I was there for a few months though, like I said, and I tried really, really, really hard to be a Mennonite. I tried really, really hard. And during that time even, I was engaged to a Mennonite guy briefly. It never crossed the pulpit. It never was announced or anything. But I had colors picked out, I had announcements made, I had everything ready. He wound up saying that he liked me more like a sister. And I was like, you are so incredibly lame, because he was also queer. I'm not going to name drop him because I don't it's not my place to do that. But he was also queer. And I was totally willing to have an open relationship so he could go out and explore as long as he came back to me. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Because how many other Mennonite girls are going to have you do that, huh? None. That's how many. But after that relationship fell through, I was like, all right, you know what? That was my last straw. Like, I'm not going to be able to be a teacher in here. I'm not going to be able to have a relationship in here. What am I going to do in here? I'm just going to be sitting around doing nothing for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
I can't dress the way I want. I can't love who I want. I can't do the things that I want. I don't even believe any of this. They harbor people who hurt children, who are pedophiles, who like this just doesn't make any sense. Like, God would never ever allow this to happen if this was his one true church. If this was his one true church, he would have killed these people off in a plague or something. Like, that just does, like, this is ridiculous. This is not, no. So I was done. I was done. I was
Yeah.
done, and it was over. And so my mom found me another place to live that was like a live-in job, and I lived there for a brief stint. It didn't wind up, like, it was going to be like a trial period. It didn't wind up working out there. It wound up being something that I was not equipped for. That person had too many mental issues for me to deal with. I was too young and inexperienced at the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, after that, I was like, okay, well, what are you going to do now? You got to find a different place to live. Okay, well, you can go back to your parents, or you can take a chance and you can go to Seattle. And so I did. I moved to Seattle, and the next few years were horrific and beautiful, terrifying and amazing. I will say, if there is anybody listening who is Mennonite and you're thinking about leaving, and you don't know whether you want to leave or not, I'm just going to ask you this. I'm just going to tell you this. If you're going to be a Mennonite, be one. Get off the fence. Stop it. Don't be a fence rider. But if you're going to leave, just leave. Just leave. Once you leave, you are so much more happy. I will tell you what, that day that I drove away, August 27th, 2020, was the happiest day of my life. That is my anniversary of when that is the day that I escaped and I went, and I never have looked back since. Never have I ever looked back. Ever. Ever. I will say, have a solid plan for where you're going to live.
Yeah.
Do not leave with just a fly by the seat of your pants, not really knowing where you're going or who you're going to be living with. Don't do the whole Airbnb thing. That does not work. Don't do it. Have enough money for 3 months of rent. Have a place to live and have a job lined up. Do those things, and you can leave.
Yeah.
That's what I should have done. I did not do that. And because of that, I wound up having a place to live for exactly 3 months. And then I wound up being homeless for another 2 or 3 months. And I will say, even when I was in the back seat of my car and I had ice on the inside of the windows, And I was so cold, I couldn't even cry. I remember laying back there and thinking to myself, you have just enough gas to where you could probably get to the desert. And you could probably beg some farmers for some gas if you tell them your story enough. And you could make it to your mom and dad's house. And you would have a roof over your head and a hot shower and food in your stomach. Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? And a voice just said, because I would rather die free than live in captivity.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that I will die if I'm a Mennonite. I know for a fact I will. When I was at the end of that girl's class, I tried to chuck myself off of a cliff and something pushed me back up. I still don't know exactly who it was, but somebody did. And I was mad. I was so mad. I was so incredibly mad because I did not want to go back
Mm-hmm.
to being there living with my parents. I didn't because I knew it was coming. But I lived. But I also know that had I stayed Mennonite, that wouldn't have been the last time that I would have tried something. And I knew for a fact that I would have not survived. And that's why I knew that if I stayed Mennonite, I would have not survived it. I wouldn't have. I would have felt so guilty over having as much attraction to women as I do to men. I would have felt guilty over not feeling completely like a woman, over feeling like a man sometimes.
Yeah.
I would have felt guilty over not being able to fit in and be a perfect Mennonite. So that's why I left, is because I knew that I couldn't live. I couldn't live there.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been so crazy since. You will learn so fast who your real friends are. For a brief second, for exactly like 1 or 2 months, I had to live with Mennonites again. Some people who I thought were family. Some people who I thought, who they basically were like surrogate parents to me at one point. Yeah, they were more conservative than my parents were, but they loved me, right? Right? But when I lived with them, all of a sudden, I learned really quick how conditional that Mennonite love can be.
Yeah. Very true.
And that's not love. That's really not. I remember asking them if they could respect me as much as I respect them, because I was incredibly respectful of them. I just asked them if they could please respect me as much as I respect them. And the man took such offense to that. He took such offense to that. How dare you ask me to respect you? I don't honestly think he knows what that word means. I really, really don't.
Yeah.
Because you have to respect everybody. But no, he demanded respect from me because I was in his home, and how dare you ask me to respect you when you're in my home?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Like, even if I am in your home, you still have to respect other people. Like, even if they are in your home, like that's anyway. I wound up losing them as friends. And it will forever be one of the saddest things to me because I truly did love them. To this day, there is only ever two Mennonites who I can truly call my friends, who
Yeah.
truly I do not feel judged by, who the one of them has even met one of my first ever girlfriend. She met my first ever girlfriend. And she was just like, "Oh, okay. Hi, how are you?" And she was just completely happy about it. Just, oh, well, you're happy, I'm happy, we're all happy, you know?
Yeah.
And I will honestly say, if all Mennonites were like her, I would have a hell of a lot less issues with them. If all Mennonites were like my friend, who checks in on me once in a while to see how I'm doing, who has helped me out when I've actually needed it, who has genuinely been there for me when I've been breaking down, and who hasn't judged me for it. If they were like her, maybe I would maybe I would be more okay with it. Maybe I would be less maybe I would have less disdain.
Mm-hmm.
But as it stands, I don't see that there is much good that can come from it. My one friend has to ask her husband before she can go to the store to get milk. That to me should never happen. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be gone most of the day and your wife is mostly in the kitchen or whatever and mostly in the home anyway where you want her in the first place, and she needs stuff like that, then for goodness sakes, trust her enough to know what she needs. Like that
Yeah.
just yeah, that rubbed me so the wrong way when she had to do that in front of me. I don't know. With my other friend too, and the way that she acts, it gives me hope that maybe not in this generation, maybe in the next, that there will be a split and there will be a better church that will come. They will be more accepting. They will be
Yeah.
more loving.
Yeah.
They will be better. I'm still not a Christian. I'm still not a Christian. I've found my own spiritual beliefs since then. And I encourage everybody to do the same. Find out what you believe and why you believe it. You know,
Yeah.
it's so important to figure out that for yourself without anybody ramming it down your throat. But if people were to be Christian, and even though it may have started from an awful place, because most Mennonites don't know how it actually truly started. You know, John Holdeman blackmailing poor immigrants into joining his church, everything.
Mm-hmm.
If there were to ever be a split where the Mennonites would be better and more kind and more loving and more open, less tolerant of abusive people, then I might point more wandering Christians in that direction. But until that day comes, I cannot do anything except for to warn them that if you go anywhere near that, there is nothing over there
Right.
but horrors and sadness and grief like you cannot imagine. And I wish it wasn't true. I really do. But for anybody who is different in any way, like me, whether it be neurodivergent or whether you wind up being somebody who is queer in some way, shape, or form, your place is not there. And that's okay. And it doesn't matter what they tell you. You are not less than. You are not evil. You are not broken. You are not going to go to hell. You are worth so much more than
Yeah.
anything that they tell you. And I am so sorry if anybody has ever made you feel that way, because that's not the case. You should never feel that way. There is a lot of awful people. There's so many awful people in that church. Don't let them break you. That actually reminds me of something that my mom said to me when I went back for a visit not that long ago, a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. She
Mm-hmm.
said to me, "I'm sorry I didn't break you."
Wow.
And that I could not believe that she had actually spoken those words to me. And I said, "What? How? I'm not. How could you say that to me?" I said, "Do you realize that by you saying that, that is a horribly awful thing? If you had broken me," I said, "I would have been I wouldn't have been able to survive half of the things that I have." I said, "I've gone through some horrible things in my life. By me not being broken, I have survived it. That's the only way I've been able to survive it." And she goes, "Well, I'm sorry I didn't break you."
Wow.
And it just really struck home to me how horribly, awfully brainwashed and broken my own mother is. And I can't see her being able to break free.
Yeah.
I've talked with her own family some about this. They went and they took me away from them, and we weren't able to keep in contact with them at all. But I've
Mm-hmm.
managed to find them since, and we talked about it. We've talked about her as a child and stuff, and they can't believe the way that she's turned out. And we've all just been like, "Yeah, no, we really hope that someday my dad dies. Like he gets right, but he dies. So it sets my mom free, and she's able to break free of that place." I don't see it really happening, but it is a hope. It is a hope that maybe someday she can break free of all that.
Yeah.
It's funny though, since I left, my dad has actually gotten so much better. It's almost like he respects me now that I left.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my mother who is becoming increasingly abusive. Incredibly abusive. I mean, she's just kind of just upped the abuse that she was having before. When I was young, it was always body shaming me,
Uh-huh.
which I realize now it's probably just projection because she's
Right.
realizing now that she's not 17, and she'll never be 17 again and hot and being able to go and keep my dad like that.
True.
but she was so angry that I didn't wind up with the skinny genetics on both sides. I wound up with the other genetics on both sides. And it wound up causing some eating disorders, which really didn't help the matter. So it obviously hasn't stopped since, and I am she still tries to write me a diet plan every single time that I show up at the house, and I'm just like, Mother,
Hmm.
I am healthy. I can perform all of my daily tasks and routines perfectly fine without, any extra problems. I can I can go for long walks without any problems or joint pain or anything. I can do all of this. I can assure you, I am fine. Just because I am not, 120 pounds like you would want.
Right.
But it does not stop her from continuing to shame me almost every chance she gets because that toxic diet culture is so ingrained in her. And
Hmm.
it really makes me sad because her life is so miserable that way. It's just constantly like, I don't know, maybe it's the one thing that she can control, and so she tries to control other people with it too. But between that and then the whole, I don't know, just everything is just never good enough for her. I am never good enough for her. But I will say, like I said before, my dad genuinely feels like he's starting to try to make amends. He still can't admit to anything. He still will never admit to anything. And anytime that I try to bring up anything, if he ever hears this, he will deny the entire thing. Or he'll do the other thing of being like, "Oh, I'm such a horrible person. I'm such a horrible person." Because that's his go-to. It's just, "Oh, I'm so horrible. I'm so awful."
Yeah.
But no, I do feel like he genuinely is trying to make amends for it. I don't know, maybe he just isn't physically capable. Maybe he isn't mentally capable of acknowledging it, of being like, some of the things that I did were just as bad as my own father. Because, like, I remember one Christmas when I was 7, I got a robot for Christmas from my grandpa on my mom's side. And I didn't know that I liked robots yet. I was terrified of it. I was terrified
Yeah.
when I saw it. And I burst into tears. And my mom made me give my grandpa a hug. And I was like, "Thank you, Grandpa. I love it." And I clearly hated it. I was so upset by that. Oh, it scared me so bad. Mind you, later on, a couple days later, I was playing with Happy as Metalog. I thought it was pretty cool, but before I was so scared of it. I was so scared of it. But anyway, that night we got home and my dad beat my ass and then wound up like, "Tell your mom sorry." I told, "Sorry, mom. That wasn't good enough. Get back here." I wound up getting like seven beatings in a row or something like that. Like it's like a bunch in a row because like I couldn't say sorry just right or something. Things like that. I don't think my dad will be able to acknowledge. I don't think that he would be able to say, "Yeah, that happened. Yeah, I was a horrible parent for doing that," and genuinely mean it without any
Hmm.
like without being sarcastic or anything like that. I don't think that he is capable of acknowledging it. But like I
Hmm.
said, I feel like he's trying to make up for it in other ways, which give me hope that maybe he's doing better.
Right.
I don't, like I said before, unfortunately, I don't think it's permanent because as many years as it's been, I can't trust him again. I love him, but I can't trust him again. I
Yeah.
want to, but I can't. Um, I found his TikTok the other day. You know how it says your contacts? It says you might know dad.
Yeah.
And let's just say his contacts, they um they were revealing,
Yeah.
which is why I say I don't trust him. I love him, but I don't trust him. But at this point, it's neither here nor there. At this point, I really just don't think my parents should be together in the first place. I don't think they ever should have been together, but I really don't think they should be together now. But my mom has unfortunately gone off the deep end and has decided to be the abusive one. So, I mean, I wish that that wasn't the case, but I don't feel like my parents and I won't be able to have a relationship.
Yeah.
I'm, by the way, though, in a happy relationship, and my mother-in-law is, to me, is a wonderful person who makes me very happy for the fact that I will not have to worry about this. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was, my mom is such an asshole. She called me the other day and she was just like, "So, are you still together?" And I was like, uh, yeah, we're engaged. Oh, well, I just thought that maybe, you had like, it was over by now. Mother, we're engaged. Have you seen anything different on my status? Because it still says that we're engaged. Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I don't know. She is a very bitter person, I think, unfortunately, who
Yeah.
does not, I think that seeing me have a fulfilling life is honestly more upsetting to her than if I was failing miserably. Because if I was failing miserably, like, mind you, I am still failing to her, but not as miserably as she would like, I think. And I don't know. It's like I said, it's a complicated relationship. I love her. I miss the mom that I used to know.
Right.
I I miss I miss the dad I thought I had for like brief seconds in childhood.
Yeah.
I mourn the childhood that I could have had. As much as people say that they hate public school and stuff, I wish I could have had that. I would have so been a theater kid. I would have been
Yeah.
great. I would have been amazing as a theater kid. And I am not afraid to speak out my mind. And I would say that's probably due to the fact that I didn't have anybody to speak out for me. Not when I was a child, not when I was a teenager, not when I was an adult. Not when I'm still an adult, but doy. But like, I've never had anybody to speak out for me, really. I've never had anybody there in my corner to back me up. I've never really had anybody to defend me. A few times, maybe here and there, but most of the time, I have been my own best defender. And like, nobody should have to do that ever. No child should have to do that ever. Like, that's not okay. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, I am who I am, and I am the strong person that I am because I raised myself to be that way. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I It was either get drugged down and become weak and nobody and let those who I love get hurt again and again and again.
Yeah.
Or to stand up and yeah, you're going to get bruised. Yeah, you're going to get hurt. Yeah, you're going to have people hate you. But you got to do it if you got to do it if you want to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. And to anybody else out there who is trying to survive and stuff, I see you and I'm sorry. And you're doing an amazing job. And the fights don't last forever. They always end sooner or later. You just have to hold out until then. Yeah. That's kind of how I got to where I am in life for now. I mean, there's still a little bit more, but like it's mostly just post leaving.
Yeah.
I have I still remember when the preachers called me. Well, so we're gonna have to we're gonna ask you about like you being in the church. Oh no, I left the church. Didn't you hear? I left the church. Oh, we're gonna have to expel you. You can't expel somebody who's already left. I still think that they tried saying that they expelled me anyway. They didn't expel me. I left. To set the record straight, I left. They did not expel me. You can expel what already is gone.
Yeah.
So I will never return to that disgusting hell pit of hatred and prejudice and absolute depravity.
Yeah.
You look like you're about ready to fall asleep.
Oh, I'm okay. Has been a long day though.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Is there any more things you would definitely want to say before you finished?
Hmm. Hmm. If anybody is questioning whether or not they are Mennonite, and you are kind of thinking that maybe you're not, but you're kind of scared and you don't know what really to do, feel free to talk to me. If you actually want to stay, I will let you know that you can absolutely stay if that's what actually makes you happy. Because that is the life for some people. Some people flourish in being a Mennonite, and I will 1,000% let you know that I know of good Mennonites. I do. I really, really do. But if you want out and you don't know what to do, let me know. And I will talk to you. I will happily talk to you.
Yeah.
And also all eyes on Rafa.
Yeah. I know I've talked to you several times and always enjoyed it.
I always enjoy talking to you too, Waylon.
Yeah. Well, okay. You definitely threw a lot of interesting detail in, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciated being on.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. It is an honor to connect with our guests, and we wish the best for them as well as our listeners. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. Our People can be found on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are interested in sharing your story, please contact us at ourpeoplepodcastteam@gmail.com. Thank you.